Hey guys, so welcome to my review for Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, the first in the sequel trilogy and of this rebooted franchise. Now, Star Wars had been going through a lot of hard times, alright? We'd gotten some good stuff, some bad stuff. The last theatrical release was the animated Clone Wars film back in 2008, though this was the first of the Star Wars saga, the Skywalker saga, to be released since Revenge of the Sith back in 2005, 10 years later. This is directed by J.J. Abrams, and this film had so much writing on it. Star Wars Episode 7, there was a lot writing on this movie. Star Wars had been dead, essentially, for years. The only real content that had come out of it, other than a few of the games, like Knights of the Old Republic or Force Unleashed, was the Clone Wars TV show. That was the only real major Star Wars thing to come out. And not gonna lie, I loved watching the show, and you can watch my video on it for that. But with this particular film, I was absolutely hoping that J.J. Abrams would be able to at least breathe some life into the franchise. Not exactly save it per se, just breathe some life into it. I don't think Star Wars, quote-unquote, needed saving. I don't think that. I think Star Wars had been fine. I just think, if you were really going to do this, you need to breathe some fresh air. And they absolutely did that here. Yes, I know the criticisms that have been leveled at this film, and I'm going to address that. But the best way I can describe my feelings at the film is this clip right here.
I like it a lot.
I love this movie. If you saw my top 20 favorite movies of all time, it was number 20. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I actually think it does a few things slightly better than Return of the Jedi. And in a few ways it's not, alright? It's not as good as the three legendary films that preceded it, but it is leagues better than the previous three films that had come out in theaters, the trilogy, and also tons better than the animated Clone Wars film. But what makes this film so good in the Star Wars saga? Let's get right into it. So, one thing I will establish right away, the filmmaking in this film is possibly the best in the saga. I am not joking. The camera work here is excellent. J.J. Abrams focuses on two main aspects the entire time that we're in this film. The characters and the environment, the most important things in a Star Wars film. Whenever there's an action scene, he always makes sure that there's some character on screen that we know and or care about. Whether it's Rey, Finn, Han, or Chewie, he always makes sure there is somebody on screen that we care about. There's never just a cool scene with some stormtroopers fighting some resistance fighters. There's always somebody there. When in the battle scene between the stormtroopers and the resistance fighters on Takodana at Maz's castle, we have Finn watching Poe Dameron fly through the X-Wing, or we have Rey battling stormtroopers and Kylo Ren herself, or we have Han in the midst of it too. And that's actually really, really good. And the environments look so good in this film. And there are callbacks to the original trilogy in all three of the environments. We had a desert planet in Jakku that's similar to Tatooine. We had a snow planet in Starkiller Base that's similar to Hoth, and we had the forest planet in Takodana that's similar to Endor. And not gonna lie, I actually like Takodana better than Endor. The colors are so much more vibrant, and the environment just looks so much better. I think Takodana is actually a better looking planet than Endor. So there is that. The visuals in this film are downright amazing. That has to go to the cinematography. The cinematography is spectacular in this film. I don't usually factor in cinematography into my feelings about a film too much unless it's spectacular or awful. And it is downright spectacular here. And the way that the planets look, and just like the original trilogy, unlike the prequels, these feel so real. These feel like real worlds you could go visit, and you'd want to visit them. And I actually think Jakku might be a better looking desert planet than Tatooine even. I know that might be weird to say, but I don't know. It's probably just the way it's filmed. The camera work is so good here, and there's a good amount of long pans with good takes. And there isn't a lot of choppy editing during the action scenes. The editing is actually really great here. It flows perfectly as the film takes its time, and I'll give it that. The pacing in this film is excellent. It takes its time telling the story the way it should. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels forced except for a couple elements, and I'll touch on those. But it feels and flows really, really well. And I am going to say something here. The characters that they introduced are really, really good. For example, Finn. What makes him so interesting is for the first time in the movies. This has been done in novels and in comics and in games, but for the first time in the movies, we see underneath the helmet of a stormtrooper. Do you know how cool that is? For the first time, the stormtroopers had just been allegories for Nazis, and there is a scene in the film. It's when they fire Starkiller Base. They go Nazi overload here. Like, they have the bands with the red and the black symbols. They all raise their fists like the Nazis do. They have the red and the black banners similar to what Nazi Germany had. It's almost Nazi overload, and that's okay because, that's what the stormtroopers represented. But for the first time, these stormtroopers become people. They become human. They're not just mindless drone-killing machines that are meant for our heroes to battle. We actually get a look under them. And it's when Finn discovers what battle is really like, what war is truly like, and the grittiness of it and the darkness behind it. That is really unique, and it gives good reason for his betrayal of the First Order. He doesn't feel that this is right. Something inside of him does not like killing, especially for these kinds of people. And Rey. There has been a lot of controversy surrounding Rey, and I'll even have to touch on that in The Last Jedi. But let's talk about Rey right here. She is a good protagonist. And honestly, I know people say, Mary Sue and all that. She actually has very few differences than Luke, if we're being honest. The first difference is, unlike Luke, who was living with his aunt and his uncle on a moisture farm, and he was living with a family, she has no family. She's on her own, and she has to scavenge by herself. She's self-sufficient, self-reliant. She has to live on her own, which, guess what, is perfectly okay. I don't get the problem here with having a competent protagonist. I get they may be too competent, and I'm going to touch on that. Again, I like the fact that she is self-reliant, self-sufficient. She can look out for herself. And I love this scene right here, where she's scrubbing her equipment, and she sees all these people scrubbing that are older than her, and she hates the fact that this is probably going to be her life. And then she sees a ship take off in the distance, and you can tell she so wants to do that. She just wants to leave this planet, but there is something holding her back, and we'll get to that as well. Now, I like how she kind of knows the rules of the trade. Certain bounty hunters and certain scavengers act a certain way, how to trade around. And I like how when these two thugs attack her, she has no problem fending them off. Again, a competent protagonist. I actually like that. She's awesome, and she has her own level of strength. And not to lie, Luke kind of had those moments as well, like how Luke was able to combat with the stormtroopers perfectly. Luke's able to fight stormtroopers perfectly fine. She's able to fight off scavengers and stormtroopers. So there we go. That's no problem at all. And I do like the instant bond that she forms with Finn. Granted, it's through a lie that Finn tells, but I like how she can tell he's almost as lost as she is, and he's just trying to find his place. And I love the initial chase sequence in the Millennium Falcon. I have to say that. I get some complaint that, somehow they figured out how to fly this thing, but Rey seems to know what the ship itself is. I do find it funny how, they know who Han Solo is, but they don't know what the Millennium Falcon is. I'm like, you know who the captain of the ship is, but you don't know the ship itself? It's so weird. And I do like how, in this chase sequence, again, it's sticking true to our rules of filmmaking here. They are keeping the characters on the screen during the entire sequence. What I also like about Rey is that she does know how to fly the ship, and I know people would complain about that, saying, how does she know how to fly the Falcon? Okay, Luke knew how to fly an X-Wing, and, he never flown a ship before. Anakin knew how to fly a Naboo ship, and he was just a kid. He never left Tatooine in his life. He knew how to fly a Naboo ship. How come people never had problems with that? And I know with the Luke thing, I did hear the argument that, oh, maybe they had a military debriefing. It takes more than a debriefing to know how to fly a ship like that. How to fly a military ship. How come people didn't have problems with it in the first two, in those films, and yet they have a problem with it here? Hello? There's nothing wrong with having a very competent protagonist. A Mary Sue, as I have looked up, means that she is too competent, and to be fair, she isn't. She really is kind of clunky in terms of her saber combat and the way that she actually fights. And I'm going to touch on those because I know those criticisms. Let's just keep moving. So, when we meet Han and Chewie, I actually really love that scene when they, we have that nice calm music and Han just says,
Chewie, we're home.
That's all you need for Star Wars fans. Just to pull us in, because we feel like, yes, this is it. We're in the middle of our Star Wars adventure. This is exactly what we wanted. And, of course, I'm going to admit, I have a weird feeling about this Rathtar chase scene. I do think that the Rathars look pretty fake, and even then, there is a lack of tension because, our heroes never feel like they're in danger, except for the moment when Finn gets captured. We never feel like they're really in danger because the Rathars just end up eating all the mercenaries that Han has to counter with. But I did like that scene. I did like the scene where Han encounters all these mercenaries, like he's still in the middle of that smuggler's game, where he just has to deal with all these bounty hunters hot on his tail, just like in the first film. And yes, I know this film has some repeated elements. I'm going to touch on that near the end. So, I like that we have Han and Chewie back. And they're honestly lots of fun. And they bring lots of comedy to it. And it's a lot of fun to see. And I like how for the first time we have a mentor to our main protagonist that is not a Force wielder. Han does not know how to use the Force. But he knows what the Force is. He was there for the experiences with Luke and Leia. I love how Han is able to help mentor Rey, even though he is not a Jedi. He's not a Force user. He does know what the Force is, and he's at least helping Rey step into that world until someone who truly knows what the Force is can help guide her. And that's actually a really fun and unique story, and I love that. Let's talk about the main antagonist, Kylo Ren. Now, Kylo Ren is, in my opinion, the most interesting character of this entire film series thus far. From Force Awakens, at this point, till Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren is the most interesting. He has the most intriguing backstory. He is the son of Han and Leia, and the way that he conducts himself, you can tell he idolizes Darth Vader. So much wants to be like Vader, the all-black clothing and the helmet. And it's not just that they're trying to make another cool masked villain. They're trying to show Kylo Ren wants so badly to live up to his idol that he's willing to do anything it takes to be Darth Vader. And anytime he comes up short, it infuriates him. It's disheartening to him. And I love how, even though this big supreme leader Snoke keeps him on a leash, he hates that he's being kept on a leash. Kind of similar to Vader and the Emperor's relationship. He doesn't want to be kept on a leash. He wants to prove he could be just as powerful as Darth Vader. And I love how he has Vader's burnt helmet and he keeps it idolized. And that's actually really unique, really interesting. I think they crafted a great antagonist here because he was the catalyst that forced all our main heroes to break apart. He has sent the world into yet another war that it didn't really need. And I love what Kylo Ren brings to the table in terms of an interesting antagonist. I think he is one of the most fascinating characters in the Star Wars saga, and I love what he brings. Again, I think he is the most interesting character. I do like how they do give the old characters a bit nice rapport, and they don't forget the old characters. Han and Leia, I love how they still have that constant old relationship, they're kind of, witty and sarcastic, they're constantly taking little jabs at each other, but there's still some genuine love there. There's still a lot of genuine emotion there. One of the best scenes with Han Solo is when he just sees Kylo Ren. and he's carrying Rey because he's captured her and he's taking her off to his ship. I love that. And it brings Han so down to earth. He's no longer just that cocky smuggler who could just blast away and not without a care in the world. He has something now that he's fighting for, something that pulls at his heartstrings. And when he tells Leia about it, you can see the genuine heartbreak in their eyes. And when they talk about it, I love the discussions that they have. I love how they really feel that they can do what they did with Darth Vader. They can pull him out of that darkness. And if anyone can do it, it would be his father, right? Oh, I'll talk about that scene in a bit. But I think it's one of the best parts in this entire saga. Having Han and Leia not only have the connection towards each other, but something that's tying them back down to Earth. They're no longer just our cool space opera heroes. Now they are forced to confront a bit of harsh reality. The idea that this child that you loved and raised, that he may be lost. It's some of the best writing in the Star Wars saga to date. And I love what they did here. It even advances our old characters in a way. And I do like how for a majority of the film, our main protagonists are together, Rey and Finn, except for the opening and when Rey is kidnapped aboard Starkiller Base. Our majority of our time, our heroes are together. It does make them feel that nice little bond. And I like the fact that they aren't exactly going the trio route like they did in the original trilogy, or at least that same team bonding feel, with Rey, with Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, C-3PO, R2. I like that they're not going that same route, that they have main heroes that do spend time together, but it's not the same feel, which I think is actually a good idea. Tell a different story and a different journey, which is ironic to say considering how this film has been criticized for years. I mean, at least for the few years it's been out. And, screw it. Let's talk about that right now. It does have a lot of similarities to A New Hope. That cannot be denied. But I don't mind similarities if the execution is done well. And I think it's done with great care here. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think it's done with great care. I think there is a lot of fun and excitement to this film, which the prequels certainly did not have. There's genuine fun and excitement here. There is a great amount of action scenes here, which is needed in Star Wars. Yes, it is over the top, campy, and blown. But guess what? That's what Star Wars is. I love when Poe Dameron in that space battle above Takodana, he's just taking out 1,000 TIE fighters by himself. Because we'd seen that, we'd seen these godlike pilots in the Rebellion just taking down TIE fighters one by one, seemingly without an issue. And I love that cocky attitude that Poe Dameron has. I think it really works. However, I think the one element that's off about him is how he's just kind of thrown back into the mix. J.J. Abrams revealed in the original script he was killed off. And I think they should have stuck with that. Now they're kind of being forced to rewrite around his character a little bit, which is a little bad for him because I think there is a really cool center under there. And honestly, it's kind of odd that they killed him off because I wondered what direction it would have taken in that story. But it's not a major issue for me. Also, I do want to touch on Snoke a little bit here. He is probably the most uninteresting part of this entire trilogy. He is just in the first film, he's just a cool projected villain. Then in the second film, we see him for what he really is. I don't know if they're trying to do the same thing with the Emperor here. At least the Emperor had some personality to him. There's no personality to this villain. I never cared about him, which is probably why, unlike most people, I wasn't that mad about his death in Last Jedi, because there was nothing memorable with him. He had little to no personality, there was nothing that was even that remotely intimidating about him, and we obviously know he's just the backseat to Kylo Ren, just like the Emperor's the backseat to Vader, except I think he is shoved even more to the side as Kylo, who is our interesting antagonist, is put front and center, and I think that's the wise decision here. I also felt that they really kind of forced Starkiller Base into this. That's the one thing that this film does worse than Return of the Jedi. I said in Return of the Jedi, they really just were kind of lazy with the way they just threw in the Death Star in there. Starkiller Base, I'm like, you really didn't try. I felt like they were doing so good with other things, and they were so focused on other aspects of this story, They just kind of said, let's just do a Death Star, make it 1,000 times bigger. But bigger doesn't mean better, guys. Yes, this thing can wipe out 3 or 4 planets with a single blast, as demonstrated. But that doesn't make it necessarily that cool. I do like how they kind of learn from the Empire's mistakes, like they put actual ray-shielded hulls over its weakness, and it's not just one little reactor thing, like you have to blow up this big giant thing in the center of the station to make it collapse on itself, and it takes longer because, you know, it's basically a planet. The planet is the weapon. But other than that, Starkiller Base just feels like, okay, we just needed something for the Resistance to fight against. When you could have just done a cool little space battle. I don't know why you could have brought in the Republic fleet. I don't know. It just felt lazy. And Lawrence Kasdan wrote the script, who wrote Empire, and he wrote Return of the Jedi. I think he did a great job here with everything else, except for our secondary antagonist, secondary protagonist, and Starkiller Base. I think they really fell and dropped the ball on those things. And again, why do we need another big space ball? Can't we just do something else? Even Phantom Menace did the same thing. You know, it had the Trade Federation ship, but, you know, the center was a round ship. And even on Geonosis, the droid factory thing they had to blow up, it was a giant ball thing. What is it with Star Wars and big round weapons? What's their thing with that? I don't know. The only films that haven't done it have been Empire, Revenge of the Sith, and Last Jedi. Those have been the 3 films that have not had a big giant ball weapon to blow stuff up. Okay, that was lazy. But let's get back to Rey a little bit. I do like when Kylo Ren shows up, she is genuinely intimidated. The fear in her eyes, and this has to go to Daisy Ridley, who did an amazing job in the film. She's terrified, and she can, and again, she knows what the Force is. She doesn't quite know its capabilities yet. And that's actually really interesting. And I do like in the interrogation scene how she is intimidated by him, but she's trying not to show it. And what I like about the scene where he's reaching into her mind, which, by the way, this film introduced some of the best cool new uses of the Force, stopping a beam in a person, freezing them in midair, and traversing someone's mind and memories. Oh my gosh, that's so cool, and that's exciting. I love how they are not bound by any lore restrictions. They're like, screw it, let's just do it. Who says it can't be done? Let's just do this stuff with the Force. If it's truly this energy field that's surrounded by all living things, let's just try it. And I think it was really cool here. But I like how when Rey resists him, there's a connection there. He can sense her sense of belonging, her sense she wants to belong somewhere. She needs someone to care for her. She needs a family. She needs to know where she fits in this universe. Kylo Ren wants to be like his idol. Kylo Ren desires to be as powerful as his grandfather. And I like how they have sort of that connection. They're both just searching for their place, and even though she resists him, you can tell there's a connection there. And sometimes you just need 1 or 2 main flaws in a protagonist. And there are 2 with Rey. One is that she can be a little naive, and that's to be expected. She's just stepping into this new world, and I think they expand on that a little bit more in Last Jedi, and I'll get to that when I get to that film. But she is just naive when she steps into this new world, but I like that wonder and excitement. She's excited to see what this world can bring, but there's also some adherence to it. There's also some fear there. Like when she finds Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber and she's thrown into this Force vision. It's terrifying for her, and we're intrigued. What does all this stuff mean? And she is frightened by what she's feeling. And I like how she is Force sensitive, but it's been suppressed for years, or she never really knew how to use it. And now that it's all being thrown at her, she's overwhelmed, and she just doesn't know how to take it in. And I like how she is trying to figure this out on her own. Han can only help her so much. Like, she needs a real master. And I think that's actually really good. And the other main problem with her is that she is searching for a sense of belonging. that actually can be a flaw, and that's what every hero needs to set them on their journey. Something in them that they feel empty for, that they don't feel complete, and they need something that they're searching for. And that's what she's searching for, a sense of belonging. Luke was off for a search of adventure, and obviously he was looking to find and to become a Jedi. Rey isn't exactly looking for that. She goes into that path thinking that's what it's going to do for her, but at first she's just looking for a sense of belonging, which, let's be honest, we all do. Everyone wants a sense of belonging in the world, or with a family, or friends, or someone. And that's actually really relatable, makes her a cool protagonist. And let's talk about this scene with the mind trick with the Stormtrooper. I actually think this is a really good scene for a few reasons. One is Daisy Ridley's acting. I like how when she tries to force mind trick him, now it actually isn't out of bounds to think she would know how to do this, or at least know what the mind trick is. Because if Legends of the Jedi had been passed down and she knows Luke Skywalker, and then if Legends of the Force, they would obviously know about the various abilities that the Jedi can do. And obviously she's putting together, hey, if the Force is real and the Jedi are real, maybe this stuff is real too. And I like how she tries it a few times, but it doesn't work. And so she doesn't know this is going to work. It's just a long shot. And somehow it works. And I love how when it does work, the look in her eyes, she's like, oh my God, that actually worked. That genuinely worked. It's actually not only really funny, but a really cool scene. How she's just trying this stuff out for the first time. And when it works, she's surprised. And now there is more curiosity in her. She wants to know what else can be done with the Force. And I do like, there's a lot of good humor in this series. A lot of good humor. The jokes are really fast. And some of the best scenes are like when the Stormtroopers are forced to walk out during Kylo's rage, when he just flips out, which I think deepens his character a little bit more. There's still a sense of youth there. There's still a sense of undeveloped and unnurtured anger that while he has training, it's clear he's a Force novice. And actually, in an interesting way, his lightsaber reflects it. If you can tell based here, the handle's incomplete. There's still wires showing, and there's still some incomplete parts of the handle. And when it ignites, the core's unstable, showing that a Force novice made it, showing that he still has a long ways to go. And just like a child, or just like an immature warrior, when he's prone to anger, he flips out and just lashes out like a rabid dog. And it deepens the character all the more. And now, I will admit, the climax of this film is a little underwhelming. The battle at Starkiller Base, it's a little underwhelming because you kind of feel like we're just kind of going through this thing again. Not to say it's not visually impressive and can't be intense at times, but yeah, I mean, it just feels like, okay, we're just doing this thing again. Fly around till that hole blows up, and then make your attack run, ship blows up, whoopity-doo. But at the same time, I mean, it is a Star Wars formula. Every franchise has it, so I guess it's not a major issue. The climax does feel underwhelming, and there are intense moments. Now, I've been waiting to talk about the lighting in this film, and I think the lighting in this film is really good, and it can all be summed up with this scene, the death of Han Solo. What I like about the scene is there is plenty of dark. The only real light is on our two main characters in the scene, Han and Kylo. And you can tell in Kylo's face, on one side of his face, there is red, and on the other side, there's blue, showing that clash in between him. As Han gets closer, the dark side of his face starts to deepen with more blue, almost hinting that maybe he can be redeemed. And then when his lightsaber ignites, just before he kills Han Solo, the red completely consumes his face as the dark side triumphs. You could watch this scene with no sound, and it works perfectly because the lighting indicates the duality within him, and when his face goes completely red, we can see that the dark side has triumphed and he has chosen the path of the Sith. It's a brilliant scene, and there are so many scenes in the film like that, with great shadows, hard and soft light combos, with the appropriate amount of light contrasting with the darkness. that shows our characters in this environment. I think it's brilliant. Now, final points with Kylo Ren and Rey. That lightsaber duel. Now, my theory as to why Rey was able to best Kylo despite her being a novice at lightsaber combat. One, she isn't exactly flawless. The way she swings and stabs, you can tell she's just kind of fighting for survival. She's just trying to counter Kylo's moves. At first, she just tries to stay on his feet, and he's beating her initially. He can tell how much of a novice she is. She's just trying to counter his moves. And what I love is how when Kylo is attacking, A, he's visibly wounded, but B, he's filled with rage and anger, and it's the way he's talking and the way he moves with saber combat. It's pure rage, like a rabid dog. And when you're angry and you're lashing out, any sense of logic or training or any sense of reasoning is kind of just thrown out the window as you're just lashing out. And Rey, who's obviously staying more calm, which is good. What a good combatant should do. Clearly, someone who's been self-sufficient, surviving on her own, would know at some point, don't lose your cool. And she know how to stay calm. And I like that here. Now, she's trying to keep calm. And she can take advantage of that. While he's just lashing out, her staying calm, she can take advantage of that. She can exploit his weaknesses and these big weak spots that he opens up for her. That's good combat. So it's not that she's a Mary Sue. She's simply doing what any good combatant would do. Staying calm, studying your opponent, and letting him make the wrong moves and you take advantage. That's simply just being competent. And there is not a problem with the protagonist being competent. Okay? I think Rey's a great character and a nice step into the new world, and I like that. Now, the ending of the film is like the best cliffhanger ever. As she meets Luke Skywalker, he stands there and stares at her for 6 seconds, and that's it. Movie cuts to credits, movie's over. Must have been the easiest paycheck for Mark Hamill of all time. Just stand there for 6 seconds while Daisy Ridley holds out your lightsaber. Guys, this film is so much fun. The story is exciting. Yes, there's some repeats, but it's what this universe needed to breathe some life into it. Star Wars was not dead, nor was it ruined. It just needed some life and some fresh air, which is exactly what this film brought to the table. I love what they established here, and I think it's really well done. Now, Last Jedi. That's gonna be interesting. Oh boy. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you thought of this film down in the comments below. Anyway, guys, that is it for me. Look out for Last Jedi coming out real soon. And then I got a bunch of Christmas videos to do. It's going to be a busy next few weeks. Anyways, that's it for me. I will see you nerds later.